Here, this time bringing you my next 10 reviews, a video I like to make every couple of months or so just to let everybody know what I've got coming up, what older games I'll be taking a look at, what new releases I'll definitely be covering, etc. Now, as always, there's a fair bit of wiggle room here and there based on when things get released, if they get delayed. And this year in particular, we are waiting on the announcement of all sorts of release dates for mini games. So basically, some things might change around here and there. And what's more, before we dive into this, over the course of the next month or so, there are a few games releasing into early access that I know people want me to take a look at, and I plan on doing so, but they won't be on this list, of course, simply because they are not full-blown reviews, as I don't review early access titles. This includes things like No Rest for the Wicked or Manor Lords, which are both due out in April in early access. Now, before we dive into this fully, one last note is that my currently in progress game is Morrowind, which I'm working on right now. I hope to have it done by the end of next week, as it has my full attention until new games start releasing towards the end of this month. Having a blast with it, finally about to finish it for the first time after starting it and not finishing it many times over the years, and it's going pretty well. Once that is done, however, we can move on to the new releases for April, and there are 3 of them bundled up around the same couple of days, which is always a pain on my end, but it is what it is. Kicking it off first with Eiyuden Chronicle, I believe is how you pronounce it, but I'm honestly not sure. A JRPG that will apparently have about 100 playable characters, hence the subtitle, 100 Heroes, and is going to attempt to be a modern take on the classic JRPG formula, which we see, I would say, more and more games trying to accomplish here lately. And combined with a few requests that I cover this one, I'm looking forward to the experience overall, but we'll have to see how it pans out. Then we have 2 titles coming out on the 25th of April. First with Another Crab's Treasure, a bizarre Souls-like where we play as a crab, specifically a hermit crab. And while I'm not exactly expecting anything great out of this game, it just looks very bizarre and funny to me, and what little bit I've got to play of it via a demo was really funny, with you being able to replace your hermit crab shell with various forms of trash you might find down there in the ocean, as the game itself promises that we'll discover the dark secrets behind the polluted ocean. One of the more humorous mechanics of this game, though, is that they don't really want anybody to struggle overall if they don't need to with the Dark Souls-like difficulty, and thus there will be a few difficulty options to make the game easier for you, including one that allows our hermit crab here to simply pull out a gun and one-shot bosses, which I imagine is the exact kind of thing you'd want to do after failing to defeat a boss, say 20 or so times, but either way, it looks like a fun, bizarre little game, and I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. Also out on the 25th, though, is Sandland, a game I checked out a little bit earlier this month, as it is based on a manga by Akira Toriyama. Also a game I got to play a bit via a demo, and the combination of its vehicles that you can customize and run around in, on top of just general action RPG mechanics, set in a desolate wasteland where water is a real commodity hoarded by a king, seems like it has potential to be a decently fun experience, as just running around with the vehicles in the demo was quite a bit of fun, but we'll have to see if this game can offer really anything unique to give it some staying power otherwise. Moving into May just a little bit, on the 8th specifically, we have Indica coming out, a narrative adventure that follows a nun who is traveling alongside someone heavily implied to be the devil. Also a game I've gotten to play a little bit of via a demo, and you combine that relatively interesting plot with the fact that the nun is having a bit of a crisis of faith, let's say, and even some more surreal elements to go with it, and it's a game that has my attention. Even if I'm not expecting anything grand from it, it does seem like an interesting story, which I'm always down for. On the 16th of May, however, though, we do have some, I would say, pretty great news for PC players, in that the previously PlayStation exclusive title, Ghost of Tsushima, is in fact dropping on PC, which means I can finally check it out for myself, as this is a PC channel and I can't be bothered to play things on consoles. And this one in particular has looked really remarkable to me since I first saw previews of it. So I'm pretty excited to jump into it and try it for myself. And then towards the very end of May, specifically on the 30th, which just so happens to also be my birthday, we finally got a release date for Skald Against the Black Priory, a retro RPG that combines occult horror with party-based RPG mechanics, some incredible pixel art, and you've got a game that almost guarantees I'll be spending my birthday having a pretty good time. very much so looking forward to that one. I've also gotten to play it a little bit via a preview actually. And after it has been delayed a few times, it's nice to see it finally coming out for sure. Now that pretty much does it for my planned new release reviews over the next couple months, but as always, if something comes up or changes, you'll probably see that reflected in what actually gets produced. But with that in mind, there are 4 other RPG reviews of previously released titles that I would like to squeeze in here. First and foremost, we have Drakensang, a CRPG based on the Dark Eye TTRPG, which is big in Germany from what I understand. And while I personally am not familiar with that at all, I'm always up for learning a new system, especially in CRPG format. If nothing else, simply has me excited to learn a bit about a new system, especially since this particular game actually has a pretty solid reputation for being a pretty good game, and as such, I'm especially excited to dive into that one. But then we finally have my Witcher 3 review. This will probably come sometime in, I would say, June. This will likely be the last one I do of my current slate of reviews, mostly because I know it's going to take a long time. And to give a little more detail here, I've actually already 100% The Witcher 3 many years ago. In fact, I spent like 350 something hours with it according to my Steam profile, but I've never reviewed said game, and after going back and playing the first and second one for the channel, I think it's only natural that I cap that series off finally with the last game in the series, at least currently. And what's more, I've actually never played the next-gen update version that they dropped, so it'll be interesting to see how significantly that changes the experience, if at all. But that one will just be a playthrough of The Witcher 3, kind of refreshing my memory before making the video on it. But even just doing that, that'll be quite the experience, as The Witcher 3 is a very long game. In fact, it's so long that even despite it being years and years and years ago, almost a decade actually, I remember that my original playthrough of that game took me about 90 hours to finally finish. Either way though, that should be a particularly fun video. Second to last, we then have We Happy Few, a sort of retro-futuristic, alternative 1960s England that sees people fueled by drugs and all sorts of other problems. It's an interesting game I've wanted to play for a long time, as it originally released all the way back when I still had my normal salaried job before I was doing this full-time, and thus I just couldn't quite make time to play it. And it's a game that's always really interested me whenever I've seen it, and thus I'm finally going to make some time to sit down and play it for myself. Not exactly sure what to expect. I've heard a lot of mixed things about it. I know there's a sort of like procedural generation aspect to it to some degree, and I don't know exactly what that's about, but either way, I'm looking forward to diving into it for myself, mostly out of just my own personal interest. I have no idea if this is going to be good or bad or what. Should be an interesting ride to figure it out. Speaking of interesting rides though, to cap this off, at some point over the next couple months, I am finally going to review Pacific Drive, a game I have made a video about just because I thought it was a really cool game, even if it wasn't exactly my normal cup of tea, because Pacific Drive puts us in a sort of supernatural zone that's always shifting and changing, and our only hope is to upgrade and escape via a modified car that's sort of attached itself to us. And while I was extremely busy when this game happened to release, I have been meaning to get back around to playing it, as I really enjoyed what little bit I did play of it, and thus now is the time. So I'm going to do exactly that and simply have a little me time driving through the anomalous Olympic exclusion zone. That does finally bring us to the end of this particular video, however, though looking a little bit farther into the future, once roughly June rolls around, we'll have to see where things land in terms of games and release dates, because right now, everything past May really doesn't have a lot of solid release dates, only a couple of titles mostly coming out in September, but otherwise we're just waiting for news on the rest of it. So I imagine around the time of E3, give or take a little bit, or what used to be E3, I suppose. These days it's just a collection of individual publishers announcing things. But nonetheless, around that time, which is usually the start of June or so, I imagine we'll get all sorts of updates on said release dates. And once that happens, I'll have to see whether to zig or zag on certain instances or games. In the meantime, however, that is pretty much going to do it for this video. So if you're looking forward to any of these reviews, do in fact like, comment, subscribe, stick around a little while, all that YouTube jazz. But regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have